Welcome to the Hero's Mirror. I'm your narrator. This is not a typical channel that you come across about superheroes. We won't be discussing lore or power levels or in many cases story beats. What I want to discuss with you is something that really matters. What does it mean to have the heart of a hero? Because here we are not discussing necessarily comic lore, but how comic lore will reflect not only the hero's life, but perhaps your own as well. Spider-Man was meant to suffer. If Peter Parker is not suffering, then he is not relatable, and the books are not gonna sell. So I gotta ask you, why? Why does Peter Parker need to suffer? Why does he not get an evolution stage? You see, that's a question that many fans of The Amazing Spider-Man have been asking constantly, in backlash to what a lot of editors have been saying, that Peter Parker is not marketable if he evolves, if he's not a sad sack, if all he does is suffer, and any time that something goes well for him. The status quo for Spider-Man needs to always be down on his luck, a sad sack, and everything has to go wrong for him. The typical Parker luck. Because that's what makes Peter Parker sell, according at least to the Marvel editorial team. But you see, I grew up in the 80s and the 90s reading Spider-Man. I saw him fall in love with Mary Jane. I saw him marry Mary Jane. I saw him move up in the world. I also saw the grim car wreck that was the Clone Saga. And not once then did I need to see Peter constantly suffering. I mean, he really did suffer, especially during the Clone Saga. But it got to the point that there were so many clones running around, you kinda needed to keep a list to keep up with the story. But that's beside the point. So, to see what makes Peter Parker so special, we gotta look back sometimes, even to the very beginning, where tragedy has made something of a hero that by all accounts should be untouchable, by all accounts should have the same virtue, by all accounts should be perfect. But you see, Stan Lee made the most imperfect hero. The hero was a kid that was 15 or 16 years old. But if memory serves, back then people were saying, kids can't be heroes, kids are always sidekicks. You're messing him up. You're making him a spider. That's disgusting, nobody's gonna wanna read that. And yet, he's now the flagship character for Marvel Comics itself. Peter is flawed. He makes mistakes. Sometimes those mistakes cost him dearly. Like, you see, Peter always lived by the motto, with great power comes great responsibility. When was the last time you considered your own power and your own responsibility? You see, Peter does have indeed great power. He can climb on walls, he can shoot webs, he can swing, he's got a spider sense and all that cool stuff. But you see, a lot of us do have power. And we struggle, and we strive, and we wonder. And a lot of us have power and abuse it. See, I think we forget that power doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it's a teacher deciding whether a struggling student needs to feel encouraged or humiliated. Sometimes it's a parent, or a boss, or a friend, or a stranger online having the worst day of his life. Peter Parker swings between skyscrapers, just like most of us move through ordinary rooms, but responsibility still follows us there. There was a short-lived comic called Spider-Man and the X-Men, and honestly, a lot of people passed on it, but they also missed why it mattered. For a second, I almost missed it too. Most people were expecting giant superhero team-ups. Wolverine, Cyclops, Gambit, you name it. Big action. But instead, the story focused on students that nobody cared about. The weird kids, the forgotten mutants, the ones who didn't really fit anywhere. But then we got Peter Parker, this exhausted, struggling man who could barely keep his own life together, still tried to help them anyway. That's the part that stayed with me. You see, Spider-Man has never been the most powerful hero in the room. He's not a god. He's not a billionaire. He's not the perfect symbol standing above humanity. He's just one person who keeps trying to do good, even when his life keeps giving him reasons not to be. And maybe that's why people connect with him. Because deep down, most of us aren't trying to become legends. We're just trying not to lose ourselves. But you see, a lot of people miss the point. And we all do what we can with what little we got. But Spider-Man was granted great power. And because one time he used it improperly, it cost him dearly, in the form of losing his Uncle Ben. That's something that he has never been able to forgive himself for. But it taught him the lesson that with great power comes great responsibility. And that's a lesson we all need to learn in this life. Power comes in many forms. I felt power I never realized when my grandfather told me this saying: if you're gonna be a toilet scrubber, be the best damn toilet scrubber in history. At first I thought that saying was ridiculous, but then I got to thinking. It's not about scrubbing toilets. It's about dignity and taking pride in what you do. It's never about toilets. It's understanding that no matter what your role is, the care you bring to it is your power. And maybe that's why the symbiote storyline works so well. Because the black suit was never really about alien goo, or sharper teeth, or bigger muscles. It was about temptation, about anger, ego, resentment, the frightening idea that power doesn't change who we are, it reveals us. Some people wore the symbiote and became monsters. Others eventually learned compassion, responsibility, restraint. And I think that's part of Spider-Man's tragedy. Peter constantly lives in fear that if he ever stops caring, even for a moment, he could become something terrible. You see, sitting here
and reminiscing about the importance of Spider-Man. Usually, when we think of the wall crawler, we think of battles with Venom. We think of team-ups with the Avengers. They might even think about when he had the Captain Universe powers. But that's the big picture. No one remembers the little picture. There's a story that I think is even more powerful than something in the vein of Maximum Carnage. A little forgotten issue of Amazing Spider-Man. You see, there was this little girl who was homeless and she was sick. Suddenly, she imagined herself swinging and having adventures with Spider-Man, when the reality was much sadder. You see, she only had seen Spider-Man swing by once, but she held on to the hope that maybe one day the wall crawler would come for her. And unfortunately he did, only he was too late, because he took her to the hospital as quick as he could, but she passed in the hospital bed. This was a moment that broke Peter. With all the power that he possessed, with his lightning-fast reflexes, there was some moment that he could not save a little homeless girl. Something broke in Peter at that moment. But I think Peter was missing the point. Something that perhaps he probably wouldn't know until it was time to meet the great creator. The point was that even in her darkest moment, a little girl who had been discarded by society found hope in what the thought it would be to be swinging around the city with her favorite wall crawler. And perhaps that's something that Peter will never know, or is never supposed to know. How powerful he actually was for this little girl. And that right there is the reason that Spider-Man matters so much. You see, Peter doesn't matter for the battles he has with Venom, or the battles he has with Dr. Octopus, or his team-ups with the Avengers or the X-Men. He doesn't matter that much in the long run for his powers. He matters because even though his life falls apart, be it through happenstance, in his story, or by the hand of a cruel Marvel editing team, Peter matters because of his heart and how he always treats those who have far less power than he has. The world rewards cynicism. It rewards cruelty, detachment, mockery. But Spider-Man matters because he reminds us that compassion still has value, not just for the people we save, but for ourselves. Because deep down, most of us aren't trying to become legends. We're just trying not to lose ourselves. Welcome to the Hero's Mirror.